Music, and welcome to another Licks and Tips column. Before we get started, I would like to point out that you can get all the tab for this particular lesson along with some more information at PlayMusicPickup.co.uk. Simply click on our free online magazine and you'll find it right in there. Okay, for this lesson we're going to be taking a look at picking. In fact, we're going to be taking a look at picking over the next few columns, starting with some real basics through to things like economy picking and sweep picking and so on. Now in this lesson today, I guess it might be cool if we started right at the beginning with some real basics. What I'm going to try and avoid doing is saying things are right or things are wrong or this technique's better than that technique, because although there is correct and incorrect technique, if I were to say to you, for example, don't anchor your little finger on the scratch plate because that's wrong, you could quite rightly go and get me a video of Yngwie Malmsteen anchoring his little finger and picking way more accurately and precisely than I ever could. But the thing is, it's always good to learn a new technique because you might find something that really works for you. Here we're going to cover how we hold the pick, how we actually place our hand on the guitar to pick, and also look at some cross-string picking exercises just to get us going. The first thing is how you approach your picking. There's probably a lot of you watching this that are very accomplished already, so I do apologize if we're going over old ground, but there are a few real basics as to how I consider it to be easier to pick accurately and cleanly and quickly. The first is really quite simple: no extraneous movement of this knuckle here on your thumb. It's quite tempting often to pick and let the knuckle do some of the work. This is not what we want, because firstly it isn't incredibly accurate, and secondly you will hit a certain speed barrier if you're trying to do like circular picking, for example, at very high speeds. But that doesn't mean you should never move that knuckle. There are legitimate reasons for wishing to change the angle of it. You might want to change the angle of your pick attack, and you'd bring the knuckle sort of over to do that. It would turn your pick towards 45 degrees, which might be great for getting some extra speed through the strings and some accuracy and a particular tone that you're after. But try to be aware of when you're moving it, so it's not moving around on its own while you're trying to be all accurate. The second is relax as much as possible. Have as little tension in your fingers and your wrist as you can. You don't want to be all tense and picking from the elbow, because you'll probably have a stroke or something. So take it nice and easy. Now there are times you will want to tense up a little, perhaps for sudden bursts of speed, if you're not one of those people gifted with huge amounts of twitch muscle, as I'm not. You will occasionally have to do that, but again, it's being aware that you're doing these things and knowing why they're happening, rather than discovering down the line that they were happening without you thinking about it, because that's where problems come in. Now, I did mention at the earlier on in the video about anchoring. I'm guilty of this on occasion, and so are many fantastic players, but it's a case of always having a finger or a couple of fingers touching the scratch plate, hooking onto the pickup. It kind of gives you an idea where you are on the guitar. Now, that's fine, but I kind of enjoy the floating hand sort of technique to picking, where you're not anchoring, so you have a lot of control over the angle of your pick, where your right hand is, moving across the strings with it, and I generally find it to be a little more precise. Now obviously, as I did say, this is something I think that is worth learning, even if you're happy to carry on anchoring. It's always good to have an extra ability. Now, one of the main problems when adapting to a new technique is picking across the strings with any degree of accuracy. We might do it with chords, but we're not really used to doing it in other contexts. It's that's where we start to stutter and break up. So in this column, which is at the very beginning of our picking Odyssey, we're going to have 3 examples of little exercises you can do to help you picking, also more specifically alternate picking across the strings. For our first exercise, we're going to be using an A minor arpeggio. It's going to be quite handy learning this fingering now, because we are going to be coming back to this when we get more into things like sweep picking. But as we said today, this is an exercise about alternate picking across the strings. So let's learn the actual pattern first for our left hand. Your root note would be the A on the 12th fret of the A string. The second note would be the 10th fret of the D string, which you'll play with your second finger. Then the 9th fret of the G string with your index finger. The 10th fret of the B string with your second finger. The 8th fret of the high E string with your index finger. And then the 12th fret of the high E string with your little or your pinky finger. And that gives you now, to pick this, what I'd like you to do is try not anchoring your fingers for now and use a strict alternate picking pattern. So we'd have down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. This exercise can help us in a number of ways. Obviously, we're learning to cross strings accurately, but it's also cool to be able to upstroke various strings wherever you want them for accents and things like that. So it works in a few ways, as well as helping your right hand learn where its position is in relation to what you're playing. Mostly play the exercise slowly. The idea here is accuracy, not building up any real speed. There are certain players out there who can alternate pick arpeggio shapes with ferocious pace. One that leaps to mind is Steve Morse. I'm not him. You might not be either, so concentrate on accuracy. You can also obviously flip this around a little and start maybe with an upstroke and practice that as well, which is a really good way of doing it. Let's take a look at figure 2. Now, our second exercise uses the familiar A minor pentatonic pattern we've used in previous lessons, and you probably use a lot in your playing. What we're going to do here is use 2 notes per string and skip strings. So you'll always be starting with the index finger at the 5th fret on the low E, and then you'll play the 8th fret on the low E. Then you'll have your index finger on the 5th fret of the D string and play on to the 7th fret of the D string. Then you'll move up the remainder of the scale in the same fashion. Once you get that far, we come back down. So let's play it one time slowly. Again, it's not about playing it as fast as you can, it's just making sure you can get it nice and fluid and nice and accurate. That's what's important here. Now, figure 3 is very much the same exercise, but at the end we do a little turnaround. So instead of reaching the high E, going straight back down, we're going to play 3 notes on the high E, which would be your index finger, your little finger on the 8th, then back to the 5th. And what this will do is just turn around your picking, so you're coming back down using upstrokes to catch each string. And obviously you can reverse rehearse this, as with the first exercise, by starting with an upstroke. Okay, fairly humble beginnings for our picking Odyssey here on the licks and tips column. However, I do urge you to stick with these and stick with the floating sort of non-anchoring style a little. You may always prefer to anchor when you pick, but it's always good to have another technique in your toolbox, and it really does allow some great fluidity to your playing, which you'll see further along as we progress. That's it for this video. Please do check out PlayMusicPickup.co.uk. You can read the free online magazine, you can join our social network, you can enter competitions, and there's just lots of stuff to read and see. I'll be back next month where we'll be taking a look closer into economy picking, and things will start to get a little quicker, I promise. Till next time, bye bye.